All right, here it goes. Our first video on my new YouTube channel. It's for Standard 1 of Linear Algebra. And Standard 1 says, students will write linear equations and expressions, and students will also simplify expressions when possible. So I guess where I want to start is the idea of what algebra is. This is maybe some of your first times learning algebra, so we should maybe describe what it is. Math in general is a 100% made up language that people came up with to describe what the world was around them. They learned how to count, they learned everything, and they needed a way to communicate with each other what they're talking about, so it would be consistent. So they made up this language called math, and algebra is kind of one of the basic building blocks of this language. And so what I'm trying to teach in linear algebra is the very basics of what is vital if you're going to continue to learn math. And it will, even if you're not going to continue to learn math, you can use some of these problem-solving skills in your everyday life. Not necessarily the details of what algebra is, you might not use every day, but these skills that you're going to learn to, as you're working through problems, you'll take those with you forever. So, algebra, we started off by saying it's just a kind of a shortcut way of talking about things. It pushes buttons so the camera follows me around again. But algebra, let's just start off by saying, I'll give you an example. Let's say in my refrigerator I have 7 apples, a pineapple, what else? I have, let's see, a couple of, I'm going to center this camera so you can see what I'm writing. I've got a pineapple, and 3 jars of pickles. You might excuse my handwriting. I don't have the best handwriting, but I will try to make up for it with my enthusiasm about math. So forgive me about my handwriting. Hopefully you can read it. So here's a few things in my refrigerator. And what we're going to do is, how can I write that easier than writing everything out? Mathematicians are just a little bit on the lazy side, so we don't want to have to write this out every time we want to say something about apples. 7 apples, I'll put an S on the end. 7 apples, a pineapple, and 3 jars of pickles. So what mathematicians did way back when is they came up with a way to simplify this a little bit, a little shortcut way of writing things. So instead of saying 7 apples, they might do something like this and just abbreviate it and get rid of all of this extra stuff and just use an A. And then for a pineapple, we can say we have 1 pineapple. I also have 3 jars of pickles. Let's use, I just about put J, but I'm going to put, maybe I shouldn't go with J because I already used P for pineapple. How do people know what these stand for if there's not someone there to tell them? Well, that's another step that we use for algebra, is defining our variables. Defining what these letters mean. I called them variables, and I haven't really discussed what a variable is yet, but these letters, before you can use them in mathematics, you should define what they are so people who come across your stuff would know what you're talking about. So for instance, let me move the camera over a little bit. So people knew what we were talking about, I might say A represents apples. P, so they don't confuse it with pickles, I will let them know that that represents pineapples. And J, that represents a jar of pickles. I had to think of it as ELS or LES. LES, I think that's right. Apples, pineapples, and pickles. Now I can use those abbreviations any which way I want to. Let's say I had, let's go back to, I have 7 apples in my refrigerator, and I've got 4 daughters at home, Katie, Maddie, Allie, and Haley. They each eat an apple. They ate 4 of my apples. So an easier, instead of saying that, I can just write minus 4a to represent how many apples I might have left in my refrigerator. 7 apples minus 4 apples, I have 3 apples left in the refrigerator. I could do it, I can make a big long sentence if I wanted to. I could say I have 7 apples, they ate 4 apples. I also have 1 jar of pickles in my, no, that's 1 pineapple because I defined it up here. 1 pineapple and 3 jars of pickles. So there's my total expression for what I have in my refrigerator using algebra instead of having to write everything out. So that's all there is to it, is I'm just making a shorter way of saying something. Now notice I didn't do this. Let's go to this one. I could have possibly done this, JP, but in algebra, we don't want to have 2 letters representing one thing. We want to define it so there's no confusion, because if I put JP, later we'll learn when we put 2 letters next to each other, it means we're multiplying things together. This would mean I was multiplying pineapples and a jar of pickles. And I don't want to do that. I just want to have 1 letter represent one thing. So when you're picking your variables, picking your names for what you're going to be talking about, make sure you just use 1 letter. And that's the way you think through these at first, is, you know, use letters just to represent things, and we're just talking about how much stuff we have. Minus means either someone ate them, or you gave them away, or you took some away. You start to listen for those key words that tell you that you're subtracting things off, and then you can represent it with a minus sign. Or if you're adding some, you went to the grocery store and bought 10 apples. Well, now I can throw a plus 10a onto the end of there and make a new expression. And later we're going to learn how to put these together and simplify these algebraic expressions. All right, that's all I have for you tonight, and we'll see you in the next video.